On my 72nd birthday, my daughter Sophia called me Senile in front of Dr. Martinez. Not confused, not forgetful, Senile. The word cut through the sterile air of that examination room like a blade I couldn't dodge. But when the test results came back 3 weeks later, Sophia's face went white as fresh snow. What she thought was my failing mind turned out to be something else entirely. Something that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my own daughter, and that was only the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I should start with the morning of that appointment, though even now, months later, the memory makes my hands shake. September 22nd fell on a Wednesday this year, one of those crisp autumn days in Millbrook, where the maple trees along Riverside Drive had just started their slow burn into gold and crimson. I'd been having what I called my cloudy moments, times when I'd walk into the kitchen and stand there like a lost tourist, wondering what I'd come for, or pause mid-conversation because the word I needed had simply evaporated. At 72, I figured it came with the territory. Your knees creak, your back protests, and sometimes your brain takes a coffee break without asking permission. Helen used to joke that getting older was just God's way of preparing you for the mystery of what comes next. She'd been gone 4 years now, but I could still hear her laugh echoing through our little house on Magnolia Street. Sophia had been after me for months to see Dr. Martinez about what she dramatically called my cognitive decline. The way she said it, you'd think I was wandering naked through downtown Millbrook instead of occasionally forgetting whether I'd already watered the geraniums on the back porch. Sophia has always been the type to catastrophize. Even as a little girl, a scraped knee meant she was surely going to get an infection and lose her leg. But she's also persistent as a summer mosquito, and after weeks of her daily check-in calls growing increasingly pointed, I finally agreed to the appointment just to get some peace. The Millbrook Family Medical Center sits at the corner of Oak and 3rd, a modern brick building that replaced the old clinic where Dr. Henderson used to practice. The waiting room smelled like industrial-strength disinfectant, mixed with that peculiar anxiety that seems to seep into medical furniture. Sophia sat beside me, scrolling through her phone with the focused intensity of a stockbroker watching market futures. She wore her usual armor, navy blazer, pressed slacks, and that expression that suggested everyone around her was moving at the wrong speed. "Mom," she said without looking up, "when Dr. Martinez asks about your memory issues, don't downplay them. I need her to understand what we're dealing with." I looked at her sideways. "What we're dealing with? You know what I mean. The forgetfulness, the confusion, the way you repeat yourself." The repeating myself part stung because I wasn't sure if it was true. Had I been repeating myself? Last week, when Sophia had come over for dinner, I'd told her about the new family that moved into the Henderson place across the street. But thinking back now, I couldn't remember if I'd mentioned it once or 3 times. Eleanor Whitman, a nurse with kind eyes and silver hair, called my name. I stood, my knees protesting the movement, and Sophia immediately rose beside me like a courthouse lawyer ready to object to everything. Dr. Martinez's office felt smaller than Dr. Henderson's old space. The walls were lined with diplomas and medical journals, and a small window looked out onto the parking lot where I could see my old Honda Civic sitting next to Sophia's pristine white BMW. Martinez was a woman in her mid-40s, with intelligent brown eyes and the sort of calm presence that made you feel like whatever was wrong could be fixed with the right prescription. She'd been my doctor for 3 years now, ever since she took over the practice. I liked her steady manner and the way she actually listened instead of typing on a computer screen while you talked. "Eleanor, good to see you," she said, settling behind her desk with a warm smile. "Sophia mentioned some concerns about your memory. Can you tell me what you've been experiencing?" I started carefully, describing the cloudy moments, the occasional struggle to find the right word, the times I'd walk into a room and forget my purpose. Nothing dramatic, nothing that couldn't be explained by age, and the loneliness that had settled into my bones since Helen's death. Grief has a way of scrambling your thoughts like eggs in a hot pan. Dr. Martinez nodded thoughtfully, jotting notes in my file. "Any family history of dementia or Alzheimer's disease?" "My mother lived to 91 with a mind sharp as a kitchen knife," I said. "My father made it to 87, reading the newspaper every morning until the day he died." Sophia shifted in her chair like she was gearing up for a speech. "Doctor, what she's not telling you is how much worse it's gotten. Yesterday, she put her coffee cup in the refrigerator and spent 10 minutes looking for it. Last month, she got confused trying to get home from Brennan's Grocery, a store she's been shopping at for 25 years. I felt heat climb up my neck. The coffee cup incident was embarrassing, true enough, but it was also a Tuesday morning when I'd been distracted by a phone call from the insurance company about Helen's final medical bills. And the grocery store confusion hadn't been about forgetting the way home. I'd taken a different route to avoid the construction on Maple Street and ended up turned around. It happens to everyone. These episodes, Dr. Martinez said gently. How often would you say they occur? Eleanor, maybe once or twice a week, I said, which felt honest. Try once or twice a day, Sophia interrupted. She's just too stubborn to admit how bad it's gotten. Something sharp and hot flared in my chest. I turned to face my daughter fully, my voice carrying more edge than I'd intended. "Sophia, I raised you for 38 years without losing my mind. I think I can manage to describe my own symptoms." Sophia's face flushed the way it used to when she was a teenager caught in a lie. "Mom, denial isn't going to help anyone here. We need to face the facts. You're 72 years old, and your mind is what?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. She looked at Dr. Martinez, then back at me, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not just concern, but something harder, something that looked almost like satisfaction. "It's failing, Mom. You're becoming senile." The word landed like a physical blow. Senile, not forgetful, not occasionally confused, but the kind of word you use for elderly people who wander away from nursing homes in their bathrobes, calling for children who died decades ago. Dr. Martinez cleared her throat diplomatically. "Let's not jump to any conclusions. Memory issues can have many causes: stress, medication interactions, sleep problems, depression, even nutritional deficiencies. Eleanor, I'd like to run some comprehensive tests." "What kind of tests?" Sophia asked, leaning forward with the intensity of a prosecutor. "Blood work to check thyroid function, vitamin levels, blood sugar, and several other markers. Also a cognitive assessment battery. Nothing frightening, just some memory exercises, problem-solving tasks, and reasoning tests." The cognitive assessment took nearly 2 hours. Dr. Martinez had me remember lists of words, draw geometric shapes, solve arithmetic problems, and answer questions about current events. Some parts felt easier than others, but nothing seemed beyond my capabilities. I found myself relaxing as we worked through the exercises. It felt good to engage my mind in something concrete and measurable. Sophia sat in the corner throughout the entire process, watching with the focus of a hawk circling prey. Every time I hesitated or paused to think, I could feel her tension spike. When we finished, Dr. Martinez reviewed her preliminary notes. "I'll have the blood work results in about a week, and the complete cognitive analysis will take about 2 weeks to process. In the meantime, Eleanor, I want you to keep a daily journal. Write down when you feel confused or forgetful, what you were doing, what time of day it was, how you were feeling physically and emotionally." Sophia perked up like a dog hearing a dinner bell. Should someone be supervising her more closely? Maybe she shouldn't be driving alone or handling her finances. Let's wait for the test results before making any major changes, Dr. Martinez said with gentle firmness. Eleanor appears quite capable of managing her daily activities. The drive home was suffocating. Sophia gripped the steering wheel of her BMW like she was piloting a space shuttle, her jaw set in that way that meant she was building up to a lecture. I stared out the passenger window at the familiar streets of Millbrook, the old Carnegie Library, where I'd taken Sophia for story time 30 years ago, Murphy's Hardware where Helen and I had bought our first lawnmower, the corner where the old Five and Dime used to stand before it became a coffee shop. "Mom, we need to start making some practical decisions," Sophia said as we turned onto Magnolia Street. "What kind of decisions?" "About your living situation. This house is too much for one person to maintain, especially if your condition deteriorates." "My condition," I said slowly, "hasn't been diagnosed yet. It's obvious what's happening. I've been reading about it online. Early-stage dementia often starts exactly like this. Memory problems, confusion, difficulty with familiar tasks." She pulled into my driveway, the BMW's engine purring to a stop. "We need to be proactive." He looked at my house, a modest 2-story colonial that Helen and I had bought when Sophia was 10. The white paint was starting to peel around the window frames, and the front porch steps had a loose board that squeaked when you stepped on it. But it was home. It held 42 years of memories, from Sophia's birthday parties in the backyard to Helen's herb garden by the kitchen window. "I'm going inside," I said, reaching for the door handle. "Mom, we're not finished discussing this." "Yes, we are." That evening, I sat at Helen's old writing desk in the living room with a spiral notebook, starting the journal Dr. Martinez had requested. The house felt too quiet without Helen's evening routines. The sound of her preparing tea, the rustle of newspaper pages, the soft murmur of her evening phone call to her sister in Portland. I wrote down what I could remember about the past few weeks, the incidents Sophia had mentioned, the times I'd felt genuinely confused or uncertain. Looking at it on paper, I had to admit the pattern was concerning. But concerning wasn't the same as hopeless, and hopeless wasn't the same as senile. The strange thing was, as I wrote, my mind felt clearer than it had in months. The act of organizing my thoughts, of putting experiences into words, seemed to sharpen my focus in a way I hadn't expected. I found myself remembering details I'd forgotten, like how the coffee cup incident had happened right after a particularly stressful phone call, or how the grocery store confusion had occurred on the same day I'd received an unexpected bill from Helen's cardiologist. Stress and grief, I realized, might be playing a bigger role in my forgetfulness than age alone. The first test results came back the following Thursday. Dr. Martinez called just after lunch, and I could hear something strange in her voice, not concern exactly, but surprise. "Eleanor, I have some of your blood work back. Your vitamin B12 levels are severely low, well below the normal range. This type of deficiency can definitely cause memory problems, confusion and cognitive difficulties." I felt my shoulders relax for the first time in weeks. So that could explain everything. It could explain a great deal. Severe B12 deficiency can mimic early dementia symptoms almost perfectly. The good news is that it's completely treatable with supplements and injections. And the bad news, Dr. Martinez paused. "Well, B12 deficiency this severe in someone with a normal diet and no absorption problems is unusual. It typically indicates either a serious digestive issue or interference with B12 absorption." That weekend, Sophia stopped by unannounced, as had become her habit. She found me in the kitchen, making Helen's recipe for apple crisp, something I hadn't attempted since the funeral. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Baking, something I haven't done in too long." She watched me measure cinnamon and brown sugar, her expression unreadable. "Dr. Martinez called me about your B12 levels." I paused in my measuring. "She called you? I'm listed as your emergency contact, remember? She said the deficiency could be causing your symptoms." "Could be, not definitely is." Sophia leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. "Mom, even if the B12 helps with some of the confusion, we still need to address the bigger picture. Your independence, this house, your financial management." "My financial management is fine," I said more sharply than I'd intended. "Is it? When's the last time you balanced your checkbook or reviewed your investment statements? You haven't even opened some of the mail I've seen stacked on the hall table." That stung because it contained a grain of truth. Since Helen's death, I'd been less diligent about financial paperwork. Helen had always been our family's bookkeeper, and managing money alone felt overwhelming sometimes. But being overwhelmed didn't make me incompetent. I can hire someone to help with financial planning if I need to. "With what money?" "Mom, I've been looking at your situation. Dad's pension barely covers your property taxes and utilities. The medical bills from Mom's final illness ate up most of your savings." The casual mention of looking at my situation sent a chill down my spine. "How exactly have you been looking at my situation?" Sophia's eyes flickered with something that might have been guilt. "You gave me access to your accounts 2 years ago, when you were overwhelmed after Mom died. Don't you remember?" I did remember that. Vaguely. Those first few months after Helen's death had been a blur of funeral arrangements, insurance claims and legal documents. Everything had felt too complicated, too heavy to manage alone. I'd asked Sophia to help with some of the paperwork, because it felt like too much to bear. "That was temporary help," I said carefully. "I didn't give you permanent oversight. I'm not trying to oversee anything. I'm trying to help you make informed decisions before." She gestured vaguely at my head. "Before what?" "Before my brain turns to mush. Before the B12 deficiency causes any more problems." "Mom, you've been making questionable financial choices for years. Small ones, but they add up." The conversation continued for another hour, with Sophia pointing out various ways my judgment had supposedly been compromised. Some of her criticisms had merit. I had been paying higher insurance premiums than necessary, and I hadn't been as careful about monitoring recurring charges on my credit card. But other criticisms felt like nitpicking, the kind of second-guessing that's easy when you're examining someone else's decisions with perfect hindsight. When Sophia finally left, promising to check in soon, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, thinking about what Dr. Martinez had said. B12 deficiency severe enough to cause cognitive symptoms didn't usually happen by accident in someone with a decent diet and no known absorption problems. I walked to the medicine cabinet in the downstairs bathroom and surveyed its contents. Since Helen's death, I'd been taking a few new medications, a low-dose antidepressant that Dr. Martinez had prescribed for grief, a calcium supplement for bone health, and an over-the-counter sleep aid for the nights when loneliness kept me staring at the ceiling. I also noticed a bottle of antacid tablets that I didn't remember buying. The label showed it was nearly empty, though I couldn't recall taking them regularly. I'd always had a cast-iron stomach. Helen used to joke that I could eat jalapenos for breakfast without blinking. The full test results came back the following Tuesday, October 10th. Dr. Martinez asked me to come in alone this time, which I appreciated. Sophia had a way of filling up a room with her opinions and leaving no space for anyone else's thoughts. "Eleanor, I have mostly encouraging news," she said, settling behind her desk with a thick folder. "Your cognitive assessment scores are excellent, well above average for your age group. Your memory, reasoning and problem-solving abilities are all quite strong." I felt tension I didn't know I'd been carrying drain from my shoulders. "So I'm not losing my mind." "Definitely not. The B12 deficiency appears to be the primary culprit behind your symptoms. We'll start you on high-dose injections immediately, and you should notice improvement within days." "You said mostly encouraging news. What's the rest?" Dr. Martinez opened the folder and pulled out several lab reports. "The B12 deficiency is more severe than I initially realized. Based on your levels, you've probably been deficient for at least 18 months, possibly longer. For someone with your diet and health history, this degree of deficiency is quite unusual." "What could cause it?" "Several possibilities. Certain medications can interfere with B12 absorption, particularly proton pump inhibitors, and some antacids, if taken regularly over time. Some supplements can cause problems too, especially if they're not properly balanced." I thought about the antacid bottle in my medicine cabinet. I do have some antacids at home, though I don't remember taking them regularly. "How often would you estimate?" "I am not sure. I found a nearly empty bottle, but I can't recall using them that frequently." Dr. Martinez made a note. "That could certainly be a contributing factor. Chronic antacid use can significantly reduce stomach acid, which is necessary for B12 absorption." She prescribed weekly B12 injections for the first month, then monthly maintenance doses. "You should start feeling clearer within a week or two. The memory issues and confusion should resolve almost completely." Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not senile, not developing dementia, just deficient in a vitamin that could be easily replaced. I couldn't wait to call Sophia and share the good news. But when I pulled into my driveway, Sophia's BMW was already there. She was sitting on my front porch, scrolling through her phone with that familiar intensity. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, standing as I approached. "Actually, I have wonderful news. Dr. Martinez says, I already know about the B12 results. She called me after your appointment. Then you know I'm going to be fine. The confusion, the memory problems, they're all treatable. Sophia's expression didn't brighten the way I'd expected. If anything, she looked more concerned than before. Mom, B12 deficiency or not, we still have serious issues to address. Your finances, this house, your ability to make sound decisions. I unlocked the front door, feeling suddenly weary. The house is fine. I'm fine. Are you? You're 72 years old, with a severe nutritional deficiency that's been affecting your judgment for over a year. Who knows what decisions you've been making without thinking clearly. That gave me pause. Had my judgment been significantly impaired? I thought about the past 18 months, paying bills, managing household maintenance, dealing with Helen's estate. Had I made serious mistakes I wasn't aware of? What decisions are you worried about? I asked. Sophia followed me into the living room, pulling out her phone. I've been reviewing your financial records, Mom. You've been making some concerning choices. You're paying too much for utilities. You haven't refinanced your mortgage despite interest rates dropping. And you've been giving money to charities without tracking the tax implications. How do you know about charitable donations? You gave me access to your accounts, remember? I've been monitoring them to make sure nothing unusual was happening. The word monitoring sat uncomfortably in my chest. That was supposed to be temporary help, not ongoing surveillance. I'm not surveilling anything. I'm protecting you from making mistakes while your judgment was compromised. My judgment is fine now. The B12 deficiency is being treated. Sophia sat on the edge of Helen's reading chair, her posture stiff. Mom, even with treatment, we need to be realistic about your long-term situation. You're living alone in a house that's too big for you, managing finances that have grown increasingly complex, trying to maintain independence when you clearly need more support. I don't need a caretaker, maybe not a caretaker, but certainly more oversight. I've been looking at some very nice assisted living communities. Absolutely not. Mom, please listen. Sunset Manor has beautiful apartments, excellent medical care, social activities. I said no. Sophia's jaw tightened in a way that reminded me of her teenage years, when she'd argue about curfews with the tenacity of a courtroom lawyer. You're being unreasonable. This house is falling apart. You can barely afford the upkeep, and we have no idea how the B12 deficiency might have affected your decision-making over the past year. That last comment felt like a dart aimed directly at my confidence. How much had the deficiency affected me? Were there financial mistakes I'd made that I couldn't even remember? I need some time to think. I said, time to think, or time to dig in your heels and refuse help. Time to think, I repeated, moving toward the front door in a way that clearly indicated the conversation was over. After Sophia left, I walked through the house slowly, seeing it with fresh eyes. The living room where Helen and I had spent countless evenings reading together. The kitchen where we'd hosted Sophia's friends for birthday parties and study sessions. The back porch where we'd watched summer thunderstorms roll across Millbrook's rooftops. The house did need maintenance. The upstairs bathroom faucet dripped, and several windows had loose sashes that rattled in the wind. But needing maintenance didn't make it unlivable, and my attachment to it didn't make me incompetent. I spent the evening going through financial paperwork, trying to assess whether Sophia's concerns were valid. The statements and bills painted a picture that was concerning but not catastrophic. My expenses had crept up over the past year, and I hadn't been as attentive to optimization as Helen had always been. But nothing suggested I was on the brink of financial ruin. The B12 injections began the following week. Dr. Martinez administered the first one in her office, walking me through the process so I could eventually give them to myself at home. Most people notice improvements within 3 to 5 days, she said. Clearer thinking, better memory, increased energy. She was absolutely right. By the end of the first week, the mental fog that had been my constant companion for months began to lift like morning mist. Words came easier, names surfaced when I needed them, and the constant feeling of being slightly displaced in my own thoughts started to fade. But with the clarity came new questions. If my confusion had been caused by B12 deficiency, and the deficiency had been caused by excessive antacid use, why couldn't I remember taking antacids regularly? I started paying meticulous attention to my daily routines, checking and rechecking everything I put in my mouth. The antacid bottle sat on the kitchen counter now, where I could monitor it carefully. I counted the remaining tablets, 23. 3 days after starting the B12 injections, I counted again, 23. I hadn't taken any antacids in those 3 days. Dr. Martinez had specifically told me to avoid them while undergoing treatment. But 2 days later, when I counted again, there were only 21 tablets. I hadn't taken any. I was certain of that. So where had 2 tablets gone? I called Sophia and asked her to come over. When she arrived that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the antacid bottle and a notebook where I'd been tracking the tablet count. Mom, you sounded upset on the phone. What's wrong? I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Sophia settled into the chair across from me, her expression guarded. Of course. Have you been coming into this house when I'm not here? What? No. Why would you ask that? I told her about the missing antacid tablets, about my confusion over how many I'd been taking during the months when my B12 levels were dropping. Her expression shifted from confusion to something that looked like concern, but felt like calculation. Mom, you're doing it again. You're overthinking, creating problems that don't exist. You probably took those tablets and forgot. I specifically haven't taken any. Dr. Martinez told me to stop completely during treatment. Sophia reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. This is exactly what I've been worried about. The paranoia, the obsessive behavior, the confusion about what you have or haven't done. But I wasn't confused. For the first time in months my mind felt sharp and clear, and what I was seeing clearly was that something didn't add up. Do you still have a key to this house? I asked directly. Sophia's hand stiffened on mine. You gave me 1 years ago for emergencies. That's not what I asked. Do you still have it? Yes. But I've never used it without telling you. Never. A flush crept up Sophia's neck. Maybe once or twice just to check on things when you weren't answering your phone. I was worried. Something cold settled in my stomach. When? I don't remember exactly. A few times over the past year, when you seemed particularly confused or forgetful. What did you do when you were here? Nothing. Just looked around to make sure you were okay, that you hadn't left the stove on or forgotten to lock doors. Did you ever adjust anything, move things, check my medications? Sophia's eyes flicked away from mine. I might have organized some things that seemed out of place. You know how I am about tidiness. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, but I could feel something shifting between us, a crack opening in the foundation of trust I'd never questioned before. When Sophia finally left, promising to call the next day, I did something I hadn't done since Helen died. I changed the locks on the house. The locksmith, a cheerful man named Pete, who'd installed the original locks 15 years ago, asked if I was having security concerns. Just being cautious, I said, which felt true enough. Smart thinking for a woman living alone. You want me to give the new keys to anyone? I paused, thinking about Sophia's admission that she'd been letting herself in without telling me. No, I said, just me. That evening, I sat in Helen's reading chair with my notebook, writing down everything I could remember about the past few months. The doctor's appointment, Sophia's behavior, the inconsistencies with the antacid tablets, her unexpected knowledge of my financial situation. As I wrote, a pattern began to emerge that made my hands shake. Sophia had been unusually involved in my medical care, pushing for the appointment, insisting on being present for consultations, immediately jumping to conclusions about long-term care. She'd been monitoring my finances without my explicit permission. She'd been entering my house without telling me. It could all be explained by a concerned daughter worried about her aging mother, but it could also be explained by something else entirely. I thought about the word she'd used in Dr. Martinez's office, senile, such a harsh, definitive word for someone whose primary problem turned out to be a treatable vitamin deficiency. The B12 injections continued to work. By the end of the second week, I felt like myself again, alert, focused, capable. The mental fog that had plagued me for months was completely gone, and with it I started to see things I'd missed before, like the spare key I found taped under the kitchen sink, in a spot where I'd never hidden a key, like the way Sophia always seemed to know details about my daily routines that I hadn't shared with her. Like the timing of her sudden concern about my mental capacity, which had coincided almost perfectly with when my B12 deficiency would have been becoming severe. I was beginning to think Sophia's shock at my diagnosis wasn't surprise that I wasn't developing dementia. It was shock that her plan to prove I was incompetent hadn't worked. And that really was only the beginning of what I would discover about my daughter's true intentions. The pieces fell into place like dominoes toppling in slow motion. After changing the locks, I spent 3 sleepless nights piecing together the truth about my daughter's behavior. By the 4th morning, I knew what I had to do. I called Dr. Martinez first thing Monday morning. "I need to ask you something confidential," I said when she picked up. "Of course, Eleanor. What's on your mind?" "The B12 deficiency. You said it was caused by excessive antacid use, but I can't remember taking them regularly. Is there any way someone else could have been giving them to me without my knowledge?" There was a long pause. "Eleanor, are you suggesting someone was deliberately causing your deficiency?" "I'm asking if it's possible." "Theoretically, yes. If someone were consistently adding antacids to your food or drinks over many months, it could absolutely cause severe B12 malabsorption. The symptoms would develop gradually, mimicking early dementia." Her voice grew concerned. "Do you have reason to believe this happened?" I told her about the missing tablets, about Sophia's unauthorized house visits, about the key I'd found hidden under my sink. Dr. Martinez listened without interrupting. "Eleanor, this is very serious. If someone deliberately induced a medical condition to make you appear incompetent, that's not just abuse, it's potentially criminal. Have you considered contacting the authorities? Not yet. I need to be certain first. What can I do to help? I want to set up a meeting with Sophia here at your office. I want her to hear directly from you that my cognitive function is completely normal, that the B12 deficiency was caused by antacid interference, and that with treatment, I'm fully capable of managing my own affairs. I can certainly do that. When would you like to schedule it? As soon as possible. The appointment was set for Wednesday at 2 p.m. I called Sophia that evening. Mom, you sound different, she said when she answered. Clearer. The B12 injections are working. That's actually why I'm calling. Dr. Martinez wants to meet with both of us to discuss my test results and prognosis. Oh, there was something in her voice, not relief but worriness. What did she say? She wants to explain it in person. Can you make it Wednesday at 2? I suppose so. Should I pick you up? No. I'll drive myself. See you there. Wednesday afternoon arrived grey and drizzling. I reached the medical center early and sat in my car watching the rain streak down the windshield. My hands were steady, my mind sharp. Whatever happened in the next hour would determine the future of my relationship with my daughter. Sophia arrived exactly on time, hurrying through the rain in her navy coat. I watched her through the waiting room window. She moved with purpose, but there was tension in her shoulders I hadn't noticed before. Dr. Martinez called us in promptly. Her office felt smaller with both of us there, the air charged with unspoken tension. Thank you both for coming, Doctor. Martinez began, settling behind her desk with my file. I wanted to discuss Eleanor's test results and address some concerns that have come up. Sophia leaned forward. Concerns? First, the good news. Eleanor's cognitive assessment scores are excellent. There's no indication of dementia, Alzheimer's or any other degenerative condition. Her memory, reasoning and problem-solving abilities are all well above average for her age group. I watched Sophia's face carefully. Instead of relief, I saw something that looked like disappointment. But the B12 deficiency, Sophia started, is completely reversible, Dr. Martinez continued. Eleanor's been responding beautifully to treatment. Her thinking is clear, her memory is sharp, and there's no reason she can't continue living independently and managing her own affairs. What about the forgetfulness? The confusion was entirely due to the B12 deficiency, which appears to have been caused by chronic antacid use. Dr. Martinez's eyes moved between us. The interesting thing is, Eleanor doesn't recall taking antacids regularly. This type of severe deficiency typically requires consistent daily use over many months. Sophia's face went pale. Maybe she forgot taking them because of the deficiency itself, possibly. But there's another concern. Dr. Martinez opened my file. Eleanor mentioned finding antacid tablets missing from her home and discovering evidence that someone had been entering her house without permission. The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia's hands gripped the arms of her chair. I don't understand what you're implying, Sophia said, but her voice was strained. I spoke for the first time. Sophia, did you put antacids in my food? Mom, that's ridiculous. Answer the question. Sophia looked between Dr. Martinez and me, trapped. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I was trying to help. Help with what? You were being so stubborn about getting medical care, about acknowledging that you needed help. I thought if you had some symptoms, you'd finally agree to see a doctor. Doctor, Martinez leaned forward. Sophia, are you saying you deliberately gave your mother antacids to cause medical symptoms, not to hurt her? Sophia's voice cracked, just to make her a little confused, so she'd realize she needed support. I never meant for it to get so severe. The admission hung in the air like poison gas. My own daughter had been slowly, methodically making me sick, stealing my clarity, my confidence, my sense of self. How? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I ground them up and put them in your coffee creamer, just a little bit each time I visited. I thought it would just make you a bit forgetful, more willing to accept help. For how long? About 18 months. 18 months. A year and a half of my life stolen, my mind clouded, my independence questioned. Also my daughter could feel in control. Sophia, Dr. Martinez said quietly, what you're describing is medical abuse. You deliberately induced a deficiency that could have caused permanent neurological damage. I didn't know it could be permanent. I just wanted her to be safe. Safe from what? I asked. From making mistakes, from being taken advantage of, from living alone in that big house, managing money you don't understand anymore. The words poured out like water from a broken dam. After Dad died, you've been so lost, so vulnerable. I was protecting you. You were controlling me. I was trying to save you from yourself. Dr. Martinez intervened. Sophia, regardless of your intentions, what you did was deeply harmful and illegal. Eleanor, I need to ask, do you want to pursue this legally? I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd raised, who'd sat at my kitchen table as a child, who I'd helped with homework and heartbreaks. She was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I want you to leave, I said quietly. Mom, please, I want you to leave my house, my life and my medical decisions alone. I want the financial access you have revoked immediately, and I want you to understand that what you did wasn't protection, it was abuse. I love you, Sophia whispered. Love doesn't steal someone's mind, I replied. Love doesn't make someone doubt their own sanity for a year and a half. Sophia left the office in tears. Dr. Martinez and I sat in silence for several minutes. Are you going to press charges? She asked, finally. I don't know yet. Right now, I just want my life back. You have it back, Eleanor. Your mind is completely clear. Your judgment is sound, and there's no medical reason you can't live exactly as you choose. That evening I sat on my front porch despite the October chill. The maple trees were fully gold now, dropping leaves like confetti across my lawn. My mind felt clean and sharp, like glass washed in cold water. I thought about the word Sophia had used in this very office, senile, how easily she'd thrown it at me, knowing she'd been the one causing my confusion all along. My phone rang. It was Sophia. Mom, I'm so sorry. I know what I did was wrong, but please don't shut me out completely. You're all the family I have, and you nearly stole the only mind I have. Can we try to work through this? Maybe family therapy. I watched a leaf spiral down from the maple tree, golden in the porch light. Sophia, I need you to understand something. For 18 months, I questioned my own sanity. I worried I was becoming someone who couldn't take care of herself. I felt stupid, confused, broken. You did that to me, deliberately. I never meant it. Doesn't matter what you meant. What matters is what you did. So that's it. You're cutting me out of your life. I thought about forgiveness, about family, about the difference between love and control. That's up to you, I said finally. When you're ready to take full responsibility for what you did, not just apologize, but truly understand the damage you caused, we can talk. Until then, I need space to heal from what my own daughter did to me. I hung up and turned off my phone. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my kitchen table. The same table where I'd tracked those missing antacid tablets, where I'd realized my own daughter had been poisoning me with the very medicine meant to help. He never did press charges. Sophia has called a few times, left voicemails that range from tearful apologies to angry justifications. I haven't responded. Dr. Martinez says my B12 levels are completely normal now, my cognitive function excellent. I've joined a book club, started volunteering at the library, and even began dating a widower named Frank, who makes me laugh and never questions my ability to think for myself. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever fully trust again, not just Sophia, but anyone who claims to know what's best for me. But I've learned something important, the difference between someone who supports your independence and someone who systematically undermines it in the name of protection. I'm 72 years old. My mind is sharp, my judgment sound, and my life is my own, and that's exactly how it should be. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story resonates with you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes the people who claim to love us most can be the ones who hurt us deepest, but recognizing that truth is the first step toward reclaiming our power.